Do you always do what your brother tells you? The question came with a touch, David Meyer's hand sliding deliberately along Natalia Angelo's bare arm as he leaned closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with whiskey. The diplomatic gathering hummed with carefully orchestrated small talk between New York's most powerful crime families, but his voice had cut through the pretense with surgical precision. Natalia looked up from her champagne flute to find the Myers Capo's blue eyes dancing with calculated interest. His reputation preceded him, ruthless, ambitious, and currently her brother's greatest threat to the fragile peace treaty being negotiated tonight. Excuse me? You heard me, Bella. David's smile widened, predatory. Your brother keeps you locked up tighter than the family vault. So I'm curious, do you ever think for yourself, or are you just Albertino's pretty little doll? If you believe that even Mafia bosses deserve a chance at love, subscribe and like the story to show you agree. Heat flooded her cheeks, but it wasn't entirely from embarrassment. 3 months. 3 months since her 22nd birthday when Albertino had tightened his already suffocating grip, canceling her art school enrollment, assigning bodyguards to her bedroom door, treating her like a porcelain asset instead of a person. She should have walked away. Should have signaled one of the family soldiers stationed around the ballroom's perimeter. Should have remembered every lecture about propriety and danger and the consequences of challenging the family hierarchy. But the champagne warmed her blood, and something in David's mocking tone, the same condescension she heard in every "it's for your protection" Natalia conversation with her brother, made her reckless. Actually, the words came out bold, accompanied by a smile that matched his energy. I'm thinking for myself right now. And I'm thinking you're much more interesting than the conversation Albertino pre-approved for me tonight. She let her hand rest on his arm. Just for a moment. Just long enough. David's eyebrows shot up, delighted. Well, several nearby conversations stuttered to a halt. Then the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Natalia felt him before she saw him. Albertino Angelo materialized beside her like death personified, all controlled violence wrapped in a $10,000 suit. His hand clamped onto her wrist, gripped tight enough that she felt her pulse hammering against his fingers. Step away from my sister. His voice was quiet. Deadly. Nothing like the carefully modulated tone he used during their private family dinners, when he'd ask about her day while simultaneously monitoring every word she said, every bite she took, every breath she drew. David stepped back immediately, hands raised in mock surrender, but his smirk remained. Bernini, I was just, now. The entire ballroom had gone silent. 50 of the city's most dangerous men watched as the legendary Albertino Angelo, the boss who'd consolidated 5 territories through strategic brilliance and calculated brutality, looked seconds away from committing murder over a casual conversation. Natalia's heart hammered against her ribs as her brother's other hand settled possessively on her lower back, burning through the thin fabric of her dress. She looked up at him, at the man who'd raised her after their parents' deaths, who'd read her bedtime stories and taught her to ride a bike and promised to always keep her safe. Except she couldn't recognize him now. The fury in his dark eyes was unmistakable, raw, visceral, and completely irrational given that he'd spent 6 years telling her she was too young, too innocent, too precious for any man's attention. That she was his sister, his responsibility, his burden to protect. But this wasn't brotherly protection. This was possession. Albertino, I was just talking, she started, voice smaller than she'd intended. Talking. He repeated the word like it tasted poisonous, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his perfectly groomed stubble. His grip on her wrist tightened. You were letting a rival capo touch you. In front of the entire 5 families. Do you understand what that looks like? It looks like I'm a grown woman having a conversation. It looks like an invitation. The words came out rough, almost guttural. To men like him, what you just did was an invitation, Natalia. And I won't, he stopped himself, but not before she saw it. The truth beneath the fury. The way his eyes tracked from her face to where David had touched her arm. The possessiveness that had nothing to do with family honor and everything to do with the dangerous heat she'd sometimes caught in his gaze during those late nights when she'd find him in his study, drinking alone. looking at her like she was both his salvation and his damnation. Albertino? Her voice came out breathless. He leaned close, so close that his lips brushed her ear, and every eye in that ballroom was watching them. Watching as the most powerful man in New York bent to whisper something to his supposedly innocent little sister. That's fire you're playing with, virgin sister. The endearment was both a reminder and a threat, spoken with such dark possession that her knees nearly buckled. Fire that will burn down everything our parents built. Everything I've protected you from. So you're going to walk out of this room with me right now, and we're going to have a very different kind of conversation about exactly who you belong to. His hand slid from her lower back to grip her hip, unmistakable ownership. And Natalia? He pulled back just enough that she could see the barely leashed hunger in his expression, the way he was looking at her like a man starved. That conversation won't be about fraternal duty. The room remained frozen as Albertino Angelo led his sister out, his hand never leaving her body, his message crystal clear to every man present. Natalia Angelo wasn't available. She never would be, because she was already claimed. The drive to the Angelo estate passed in suffocating silence. Natalia sat pressed against the town car's leather seat, hyper-aware of Albertino's presence beside her, the tension radiating from his perfectly still form, the way his jaw remained locked, the measured breaths he took like a man restraining something volatile. His hand still rested on her thigh. Possessive. Protective. A weight she'd never questioned until tonight. When they arrived, he didn't wait for the driver. He opened her door himself, his grip on her elbow firm as he guided her past the security detail, through the marble foyer, up the grand staircase. Not toward her bedroom wing. Toward his private study. The door closed behind them with a decisive click. Albertino moved to the bar cart without a word, pouring 2 fingers of scotch with hands that were perfectly steady despite the storm she could feel brewing beneath his controlled exterior. He downed half the glass before turning to face her. "Do you have any idea," he began, voice dangerously quiet, "what you risked tonight?" Natalia lifted her chin. A conversation. That's all it was. A conversation. He laughed, the sound bitter. With David Myers. A man who's been looking for leverage against this family for 2 years. A man who would use me how, Albertino? She stepped closer, emboldened by champagne and frustration. As what? I'm already nothing but a prisoner here. At least he saw me as a person instead of a fragile thing to be locked away. The scotch glass hit the desk with enough force to make her flinch. In 3 strides, he crossed the space between them, and suddenly she was backed against the mahogany paneling, caged by his arms on either side of her shoulders. "You think I keep you here because I don't see you?" His voice dropped to something raw, stripped of the careful control he always maintained. "Christo, Natalia. I see you. That's the problem. I see everything." Her breath caught. This close, she could see the fractures in his composure, the way his pupils had blown wide, the muscle ticking in his jaw, the barely restrained intensity that made her pulse hammer in her throat. "Then why?" The question came out whispered. "Why do you treat me like I'm made of glass? I'm 22 years old. I'm not a child anymore. I know exactly how old you are." Something dangerous flickered across his expression. "I know the exact day you stopped being the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders. The moment I looked at you and realized my sacred duty had become something else entirely." The words hung between them like a confession and a condemnation. Natalia's heart stopped. Started again, triple time. "Albertino, do you understand what I'm telling you?" He leaned closer, and she could smell his cologne, feel the heat of him through the thin fabric of her dress. "The reason I keep you locked away isn't to control you. It's to protect you. From them. From this world." His voice cracked. "From me." Her hands found his chest, feeling his heart pounding as hard as hers. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I made a promise." His forehead dropped to rest against hers, the gesture achingly intimate. "When Papa died, when he put your hand in mine and told me to keep you safe, to be the family you needed, I swore on my life, Natalia, on my soul, that I would protect you above everything else. You have. You always have." "No." The word came out tortured. Because somewhere between the bedtime stories and teaching you to dance and watching you grow into the most beautiful, infuriating woman I've ever known, the promise became torture. Every man who looks at you, every bastard like Myers who thinks he can touch what's mine, he stopped himself, jaw clenching, but the truth was already spoken. What's mine? You can't, Natalia whispered, even as her fingers curled into his shirt. We can't. Albertino, we're siblings. He pulled back just enough to look at her, and the anguish in his dark eyes made her chest ache. Raised as family. Bound by duty and blood and promises to the dead. I know. Christo, don't you think I know? Don't you think I've fought this every single day? Then why tell me? Her voice broke. Why say this now? Because tonight, when I saw his hand on you, his fingers traced up her arm, following the exact path David Myers had touched, erasing it. When I watched you smile at him like you were considering his attention, something in me snapped. And I realized the most dangerous thing in your life isn't the rival families or the criminal world. He cupped her face with both hands, thumbs brushing her cheekbones with devastating gentleness. It's me, little sister. It's what I want to do. What I want to claim. The lines I'm terrified I'll cross because my desire is stronger than my honor. Natalia couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the thundering of her heart and the heat of his hands and the terrible, forbidden truth now spoken between them. So yes, Albertino continued, voice rough with controlled intensity, I keep you locked away. I monitor every man who comes near you. I cancel your plans and restrict your freedom and act like a tyrant. Because the alternative, letting you out there where I can't protect you, where men like Myers can touch you, where I might have to watch you choose someone else, his jaw clenched so hard she heard his teeth grind. I'd burn down this entire city first. The confession settled over them like a sentence. Natalia stared up at the man who'd raised her, protected her, loved her as family, and now admitted to wanting something darker, deeper, impossible. What do we do? She whispered. Albertino's thumb traced her bottom lip, and the gesture was pure possession. You stay here, under my protection, where I can keep you safe from everyone. His eyes burned into hers, including myself. 3 days. Natalia had been confined to the estate for 3 days, and the gilded cage had never felt smaller. She stood at her bedroom window, watching the sunrise paint the manicured grounds in shades of amber and rose, her untouched breakfast tray growing cold on the nightstand behind her. Beyond the iron gates, the city pulsed with life she was no longer permitted to touch. Art galleries she couldn't visit. Coffee shops she couldn't browse. Friends she couldn't see without scheduled, supervised visits that never seemed to get approved. The knock at her door was perfunctory, a courtesy, not a request. Albertino entered before she could respond, impeccably dressed in charcoal slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. He looked like he hadn't slept, dark circles shadowing those intense eyes that tracked her every movement. You didn't eat. Not a question. An observation that somehow felt like an accusation. I'm not hungry. She didn't turn from the window. Couldn't. Because looking at him now meant remembering his confession, the heat of his hands on her face, the raw hunger in his voice when he'd said mine. Natalia. The warning was gentle but firm. You need to take care of yourself. Do I? She spun to face him then, anger finally breaking through the confused haze she'd been drowning in. Or is that just another thing you've decided for me? Like when I eat, where I go, who I'm allowed to speak to? His jaw tightened. This is for your protection. The Myers Syndicate hasn't made a move in 72 hours. She crossed her arms. Your own security chief confirmed it this morning. I heard him briefing you in the hallway, so don't use them as an excuse for keeping me locked in here like some princess in a tower. Albertino moved further into the room, closing the space between them with measured steps. You were listening to confidential family business? What else do I have to do? Needlepoint. The laugh that escaped was sharp. You've taken everything else away. I've kept you safe. You've kept me suffocating. The words burst out, 3 days of frustration and confusion and forbidden desire she didn't know how to process. Do you have any idea what this is like? Being trapped here with you after what you said? After you admitted, she stopped herself, but too late. His expression shifted, something dark and hungry flickering behind the controlled mask. After I admitted what, little sister? That I want you? That keeping you at arm's length is the hardest thing I've ever done. Don't. Her voice shook. Don't call me that when you look at me like you're doing right now. How am I looking at you? Like I'm not your sister at all. The truth hung between them, dangerous and electric. Albertino exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair, the first break in his perfect composure she'd seen since entering. You're right. He moved to the window, staring out at the same view that had felt like freedom denied moments ago. You're not my biological sister. We both know that. But I raised you. Promised our parents I'd protect you. That bond is sacred, Natalia. It has to be. Then treat me with the respect that bond deserves. She stepped closer, emboldened by the crack in his armor. Stop hiding behind protection and duty. I want the truth, Albertino. Not another pretty lie about safety. He turned, and the look on his face made her breath catch. You want truth? Yes. The truth is I can't let you leave this estate because the thought of David Myers or any other man touching you makes me violent. The truth is I lie awake at night knowing you're 3 doors down the hallway, and it takes every ounce of control not to go to you. The truth is his voice dropped to something raw. Every time you call me your brother, it feels like a punishment for wanting things I have no right to want. Natalia's heart hammered against her ribs. And confining me here? How does that help? It keeps you close. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, and suddenly she was backed against the window frame, trapped by his presence and the intensity rolling off him in waves. Where I can see you. Protect you. Make sure no other man thinks he has a claim. I'm not a possession, Albertino. No. His hand came up to cup her jaw, thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. You're so much more dangerous than that. You're the one thing I can't control, can't command, can't have, and it's killing me. She should pull away. Should remind him of boundaries and propriety and all the reasons this was impossible. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, her hands finding his chest. Then stop treating me like a child you need to manage. Her voice was barely a whisper. If you're going to keep me here, at least be honest about why. Look at me like a woman, not a sister. Give me truth, not protection. Something in his expression cracked. You don't know what you're asking. Don't I? She tilted her face up, close enough to feel his breath on her lips. You've already confessed your desire. Now you're keeping me locked away where no one else can reach me. The only person you're protecting me from is yourself and Albertino. His name on her lips made his fingers tighten against her jaw. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. But even as he said it, his forehead dropped to rest against hers, the gesture achingly intimate. Christo, Natalia. You should be terrified. Because the man I become when I'm near you isn't your protective brother. He's something darker. More possessive. More dangerous. Then show me. The challenge escaped before she could stop it. Stop hiding behind duty and show me the truth. For a long moment, he simply stared at her, conflict warring across his features. Then he stepped back, putting deliberate distance between them, and the loss of his warmth felt like punishment. This stays between us, he said finally, voice rough. No one can know. Not the family, not the staff. What I feel, what we both feel, it can never leave this estate. It wasn't permission. It wasn't a promise. But it was acknowledgement, and that felt like freedom. The estate library had always been Natalia's sanctuary, floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with leather-bound classics, a stone fireplace that crackled with warmth on cold evenings, the scent of old paper and expensive scotch. Now it felt like a battlefield. She'd come here seeking escape from the suffocating awareness that permeated every corner of the house since their conversation 3 days ago. Every meal shared in loaded silence. Every accidental brush of hands that felt deliberate. Every moment Albertino's dark gaze tracked her movements like a predator watching prey. She didn't hear him enter. One moment she was alone, curled in the leather armchair with a book she wasn't reading. The next, he was there, leaning against the doorframe with his jacket discarded and his shirt partially unbuttoned, looking less like the controlled Mafia boss and more like a man barely holding himself together. You're avoiding me. His voice cut through the quiet. I'm reading. You've been on the same page for 20 minutes. I've been watching. The book slipped from her fingers. That's not creepy at all. Creepy? He moved into the room, and she tracked every step like her life depended on it. You want to talk about crossing lines, little sister? You asked me to stop treating you like a child. To show you the truth. So here I am. He stopped in front of her chair, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. The firelight cast shadows across his features, making him look dangerous and beautiful and utterly forbidden. What do you want, Albertino? What I can't have. His hand reached out, fingers threading through her hair with aching gentleness. What I've wanted since the night of your 21st birthday, when you wore that red dress and I realized my little sister had become a woman who could destroy me. Natalia's breath caught. She should move. Should remind him of boundaries and duty and all the reasons this was impossible. Instead, she rose from the chair, eliminating the small distance between them until they were chest to chest. Then take it. The words were barely a whisper, but they shattered something in him. His other hand came up to frame her face, tilting it toward his, and for one suspended moment they existed in the space between propriety and sin. You don't know what you're offering. His thumb traced her bottom lip, the touch electric. You don't know the man I really am. Show me. His mouth crashed against hers with bruising intensity. Not gentle. Not brotherly. Pure hunger and possession and forbidden desire finally unleashed. Natalia gasped against his lips and he took advantage, deepening the kiss with devastating skill. His hands were everywhere, threading through her hair, gripping her waist, pulling her impossibly closer. She matched him, fingers clutching his shirt, rising on her toes to press against the hard planes of his body. This was madness. This was wrong. This was everything she'd wanted without admitting it to herself. Then he pulled back abruptly, breathing hard, eyes wild with something that looked like pain. No. He stepped away, putting the width of the room between them. Cristo. No. This is exactly what I can't do. Natalia touched her swollen lips, still tasting him. Albertino, do you know what I did today? His voice was harsh now, deliberately cruel. I put 3 bullets in a man's chest because he tried to skim from family accounts. I watched him bleed out on a warehouse floor while he begged for mercy I didn't give. That's who I am, Natalia. That's the life you're romanticizing. She didn't flinch. I know what you do. No, you don't. He grabbed a folder from the desk, threw it at her feet. Crime scene photos spilled across the Persian rug, brutal, graphic evidence of the violence he dealt in. This is my world. Blood and death and ruthlessness. Is this what you want? To be claimed by a man whose hands are permanently stained. Natalia looked at the photos. Looked at him, at the controlled monster trying desperately to scare her away for her own protection. Then she closed the distance between them again, deliberately stepping over the carnage at her feet. You think showing me violence will make me fear you? She placed her hand over his heart, feeling it thunder beneath her palm. I grew up in this world, Albertino. Our father didn't shelter me from what the Angelo name meant. And you, her voice softened. You've been protecting me from everything except the truth of what we both feel. What we feel is forbidden. Then why does it feel inevitable? She rose on her toes, bringing her lips inches from his. Why do I lie awake at night thinking about you? Why does every restriction you place feel less like protection and more like possession? Why do I want to be possessed by you? His control visibly fractured. Natalia, if you don't stop, what? You'll kiss me again? Touch me the way you're dying to? Claim what we both know already belongs to you. Her confession came out breathless and defiant. I'm not afraid of your darkness, Albertino. I'm afraid of spending my whole life pretending I don't burn for you. The words hung between them like a point of no return. Albertino stared at her, jaw clenched, every muscle taut with restraint. Then he pulled her against him with bruising force, his mouth finding hers again, desperate, demanding, devastating. This kiss was different. Deeper. A claiming and a surrender all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. This doesn't leave this room, he whispered roughly. Whatever this becomes, it stays between us. Hidden. Secret. Because if the family knew, if anyone discovered, I know. She cupped his face. I know the cost. His arms tightened around her waist. Then God help us both. What boundary would you cross for forbidden love? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe for the What Happens Next. The emergency meeting was called at midnight. Natalia woke to the sound of car doors slamming in the circular drive, urgent voices echoing through the estate's marble halls, and the kind of controlled chaos that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. She pulled on a silk robe and opened her bedroom door to find Marco, Albertino's head of security, standing guard in the hallway. His expression was grim. What's happening? Family business, Miss Angelo. The boss wants you to stay in your room. Of course he did. Natalia moved to close the door, then stopped. Through the ornate railing overlooking the foyer, she could see men in expensive suits filing into Albertino's private conference room. She recognized the family's top advisors, the consigliere, several capos. And the tension rolling off them was palpable even from 2 floors up. This wasn't routine business. This was crisis. She waited until Marco's attention shifted to his radio, then slipped past him and down the servants' staircase, the route she'd used as a teenager when sneaking out was still an option. The narrow passage led to a storage room adjacent to the conference room, and if she was quiet, the old heating vent would carry every word. Natalia pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing. Received the formal proposal an hour ago. That was Vincent, the consigliere, his voice tight with controlled alarm. The Myers Syndicate is demanding a meeting. They're calling it a negotiation, but the terms are clear. Let me see it. Albertino's voice was deadly calm, which somehow made it more terrifying. Papers rustled. Then silence. Long, heavy silence that made Natalia's heart hammer against her ribs. When Albertino finally spoke, the words came out with glacial precision. They want my sister. As part of a marriage alliance to David Myers. The temperature in both rooms seemed to drop. It's positioned as a strategic merger, Vincent continued carefully. Uniting the Angelo and Myers territories through family ties. They're framing it as an honorable proposal, honorable. The single word dripped with lethal contempt. David Myers puts his hands on my sister at a diplomatic function, and now he thinks he can demand her as payment for peace? Boss, they're using the interaction as justification. Claiming Natalia showed interest. That her openness to his attention indicates she's available for political arrangement. Something shattered. Glass hitting marble with explosive force. Available? Albertino's voice had gone dangerously soft. My sister is not available. Not for political arrangement, not for strategic alliance, not for any purpose that involves her becoming property of the Myers Syndicate. Albertino. A different voice, Thomas, one of the senior capos. If we refuse outright, they're threatening to interpret it as an act of aggression. They have 3 other families prepared to back them in territorial disputes. This could mean war. Then we go to war. With respect, boss, we're not positioned for that kind of conflict right now. The shipment delays, the federal investigation into the construction contracts, we're vulnerable. They know it. That's why they're pushing now. Natalia's hands trembled against the wall. This was her fault. Her moment of defiance, her need to prove she wasn't just Albertino's sheltered little sister, it had created this. Given their enemy's leverage. Put the entire family at risk. There has to be another option. Vincent again, diplomatic. A counterproposal that appeases them without sacrificing my sister like she's a chess piece? Albertino's fury was barely contained now. Find me another option. Find me 10 other options. Because Natalia Angelo will never Cristo, she will never belong to David Myers or any other man who thinks he can use her against this family. The possessiveness in those words made Natalia's breath catch. Not just protective. Claiming. What about appearing to consider it? Thomas suggested. By time while we shore up our alliances, prepare for potential conflict, no. Absolute. Final. The moment we appear to consider it, we signal that my sister is negotiable. That there's a price for her. I won't give them that opening. Then what do you propose we do? Vincent asked quietly. Silence. Natalia could picture Albertino at the head of that massive conference table, every powerful man in the room waiting for his decision. The weight of leadership and family and forbidden desire all crashing together. "We refuse," he said finally. "Formally and absolutely. Draft a response that makes clear Natalia Angelo is under my protection and not available for any alliance, political or otherwise. Make it clear that any further discussion of her in this context will be interpreted as an act of war against the Angelo family." That's exactly what they want, Thomas warned. An excuse to escalate. Then they'll get escalation. The deadly calm was back. "But they'll get it on my terms. Increase security on the estate. I want armed guards on every entrance, surveillance upgraded, and my sister doesn't leave the grounds without my direct approval." "Understood. And gentlemen?" Albertino's voice dropped to something that made Natalia's blood run cold. "If David Myers or anyone from his syndicate comes within 100 feet of Natalia, you have authorization to respond with lethal force. She is not to be approached, not to be discussed, not to be considered available for anything. Is that clear?" A chorus of affirmatives. Meeting adjourned. "Vincent, stay. We need to draft that response immediately." Footsteps. Doors opening. Natalia pressed herself deeper into the shadows as men filed out of the conference room, their expressions grim. When the hallway finally cleared, she slipped back toward the servants' staircase. But she'd only made it 3 steps when a hand clamped around her wrist, spinning her against the wall. Albertino loomed over her, eyes blazing with fury and fear and something darker. "How much did you hear?" "Everything," she wanted to say. "I heard you choose war over giving me up. I heard you claim me in front of your entire command." Instead, she whispered, "Enough to know this is my fault." His grip tightened. "This is David Myers' fault for thinking he could touch what's mine. And it ends now." Albertino didn't release her wrist. Instead, he pulled her down the hallway, past the conference room where Vincent still waited, up the stairs, and into his private study. The door closed with a decisive click, and he finally let go, only to cage her against it with his arms on either side of her shoulders. "You are eavesdropping on family business." "Family business, that's about me." Natalia lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated even as her pulse hammered at his proximity. "Or did you think I'd stay locked in my room while men discuss trading me like cattle?" His jaw clenched. "No one is trading you anywhere. Not according to the Myers Syndicate. They think I'm available because I smiled at David Myers for 5 minutes. Because I let him touch my arm." Her voice cracked. "This is happening because of me, Albertino. Because I was reckless and stupid and wanted to prove I wasn't just your sheltered little sister. This is happening because David Myers is an ambitious bastard who saw an opening and took it." His hand came up to cup her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You are not responsible for his predatory politics. But I gave him the ammunition." She grabbed his wrist, holding his hand against her cheek. "So let me help fix it. Let me be part of the solution instead of the problem you're trying to protect. Natalia, I have insight you don't." The words came out rushed, desperate. "I've spent my entire life watching you navigate this world. Learning the codes, the power dynamics, the way these families operate. You think I've been sitting around arranging flowers? I've been studying Albertino. Observing. Understanding." He stared at her, conflict warring across his features. "This isn't a game. I know that better than anyone right now." She stepped closer, eliminating the small distance between them. "The Myers Syndicate made their move because they think you're vulnerable. They're betting you'll choose peace over principle. But what if there's a third option?" "I'm listening." Natalia took a breath, organizing thoughts that had been forming since she'd heard the ultimatum. "David Myers doesn't actually want me. He wants leverage over you. The marriage proposal is about power, not affection. So what if we give him a different kind of power?" Albertino's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "The shipping contracts. The ones the Myers Syndicate has been trying to secure with the Castellano family for months. She'd overheard that negotiation last summer, filed it away as potentially useful. What if you offer to broker an introduction? Use your influence with the Castellanos to guarantee Myers gets consideration for the contracts in exchange for withdrawing the marriage proposal and maintaining the peace treaty. That gives him exactly what he wants. No, it gives him something valuable while making it clear you're the one with the real power." You're not trading your sister, you're offering a business opportunity because you choose to, not because he forced you. It shifts the dynamic, makes him indebted instead of threatening. Albertino was quiet for a long moment, his tactical mind clearly working through the angles. The Castellanos owe me a favor. They might accept the introduction if I frame it correctly. And Myers gets what he actually wants, expansion and profit, without the risk of war. He can sell it to his people as a strategic win, while publicly backing down from demanding my sister. Something that might have been respect flickered in Albertino's expression. It could work, if Vincent can draft it carefully enough. If we position it as magnanimous rather than capitulating. You've never capitulated to anyone in your life. They'll know the difference. His thumb traced her cheekbone, the gesture achingly gentle. How long have you been thinking like this? Analyzing family politics like a strategist? Since I was 16 and realized the best way to understand you is to understand your world. She covered his hand with hers. Let me help, Albertino. Really help. Not just this once, but going forward. Teach me the codes. The protocols. Let me be your partner instead of your prisoner. You want access to this life? To the violence and betrayal and constant threat. I want to stop being a liability and start being an asset. To you. To the family. Her voice dropped. To us. The word hung between them, acknowledgement of the impossible thing growing in the shadows of duty and blood. Albertino exhaled slowly, then stepped back and moved to his desk. He pulled out a leather-bound ledger, the kind that contained information worth killing for. If I do this, if I bring you into the strategic side of family business, there are rules. He opened the ledger, revealing pages of coded entries, names, debts, alliances. First, everything you learn stays between us. No one can know I'm training you. The old guard would never accept it. Understood. Second, you follow my lead in all external negotiations. In private, we can debate strategy. But in front of the families, my word is final. Agreed. And third, he looked up, eyes burning with intensity. You never, ever put yourself at risk to prove a point again. You want to be my partner? Then act like one. Trust me to see your value without needing to stage defiant performances. The rebuke stung because it was accurate. I'm sorry. About the summit. About David Myers. I know. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Now sit. If we're going to do this, we start tonight. Vincent will need the counterproposal by morning, and you're going to help me craft it. Natalia moved to the chair, heart pounding with something that felt like purpose. Like belonging. Like the beginning of becoming who she was always meant to be. Albertino slid the ledger across the desk. Lesson 1. Every family has pressure points. The Myers Syndicate's is financial instability masked by aggressive expansion. We're going to exploit that. She leaned forward, studying the entries with hungry focus. Show me. And as dawn broke over the estate, they worked side by side, Mafia boss and forbidden sister, teacher and student, two people building something dangerous and inevitable in the space between duty and desire. Could strategy born from forbidden partnership save them both? Drop your theories below. The morning of the negotiation arrived with crystalline autumn sunlight streaming through the estate windows. Natalia stood in front of her bedroom mirror, studying her reflection with critical eyes. The black sheath dress Albertino had sent up was elegant, sophisticated, armored, nothing like the soft pastels and modest cuts he usually approved. This dress was a statement. Power wrapped in feminine lines. A knock at the door. She knew his rhythm by now, controlled, measured, inevitable. Come in. Albertino entered, and the sight of him in a three-piece Tom Ford suit made her breath catch. He looked every inch the Mafia boss who'd consolidated 5 territories through strategic brilliance and controlled ruthlessness. But his eyes held something softer as they traced over her. You look perfect. He closed the distance between them, his presence filling the room. Confident. Untouchable. Exactly what we need. I'm terrified, she admitted quietly. Good. Fear sharpens the mind. His hands settled on her shoulders, warm and grounding. But Natalia, you need to understand something before we walk into that room. Today isn't just about the negotiation. It's about sending a message to every family in attendance. What message? That you are under my protection. Completely and irrevocably. That any man who looks at you as a political pawn will answer to me personally. His grip tightens slightly. David Myers is going to be watching for weakness. For any sign that you're uncertain or that I'm conflicted about your value to this family. And if he sees it, he won't. Albertino turned her to face the mirror, standing behind her so they were both reflected in the glass. Because you're going to walk in there like you own the room. Like being an Angelo means you're untouchable royalty, not available merchandise. Natalia studied their reflection, the powerful boss and his forbidden sister, looking for all the world like exactly what they were, two people bound by blood and desire and secrets that could destroy them both. I won't let you down. I know. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a black velvet box. Which is why I'm giving you this. Her heart stuttered. Albertino, open it. She took the box with trembling fingers and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled against black silk, was the most exquisite necklace she'd ever seen, a delicate platinum chain holding a single pendant. Not a diamond. Not a cross. A sapphire the color of midnight, surrounded by intricate metalwork that formed the Angelo family crest. It was our mother's, Albertino said softly. The only piece of her jewelry I kept after she died. She wore it to every important family function, every negotiation, every moment when she needed to remind the world that she was Angelo by marriage and untouchable by choice. Natalia's eyes burned. I can't, this is too important, which is exactly why you're wearing it today. He took the necklace from the box, his fingers brushing her neck as he fastened the clasp. The pendant settled just above her collarbone, cool metal against warm skin. Everyone in that room will recognize it. They'll know what it means. What does it mean? He met her eyes in the mirror, and the intensity there made her dizzy. It means you're not just under my protection. Your family legacy. Untouchable. Sacred. Mine. The last word was barely a whisper, but it resonated through her entire body. The old families have codes, he continued, his hands still resting on her shoulders. Ways of signaling ownership and boundaries without explicit declaration. A woman wearing the Angelo crest at a family function, given by the boss himself, his jaw tightened. There's no ambiguity there. No room for interpretation. You're making a public claim. I'm making clear what should have always been clear. He turned her to face him, framing her face with both hands. David Myers thinks he can negotiate for you like your territory to be acquired. Today, he learns that you're not negotiable. Not now. Not ever. And the other families? We'll see a boss protecting his sister. Nothing more. Nothing less. But the way he looked at her, the hunger barely restrained behind controlled intensity, told a different story. They don't need to know what else this means. What you've become to me. Natalia reached up to touch the pendant, feeling its weight. I'll make you proud. You already do. Every day. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, chaste, brotherly, nothing like the heated kisses they'd shared in private. Now, we need to review the strategy one more time. Vincent has the counter-proposal ready. You remember your role. Silent observation unless directly addressed. If Myers tries to engage me in conversation, I defer to you with absolute respect. I'm present as family, not as a participant. And if he pushes? If he tries to make this personal, I remain composed. Let my presence wearing this, she touched the necklace again, speak for itself. Perfect. Albertino stepped back, his expression shifting into the controlled mask he wore for family business. The cars leave in 20 minutes. Marco will escort you down. I'll meet you in the foyer. He moved toward the door, then paused. Natalia. Yes. What we're doing today, appearing together, me giving you that necklace. The way I'm positioning you at this negotiation, there's no going back from this. The families will start asking questions. Making assumptions. I know. And you're ready for that? For the scrutiny, the speculation, the weight of being seen as the Angelo boss's greatest vulnerability. She lifted her chin, channeling every ounce of confidence she learned from watching him navigate this dangerous world. I'm ready to stop hiding what I am. Your sister. Your student. Your don't. The word was sharp. Don't say it out loud. Not yet. Not until we're sure we can protect what this is becoming. But they both knew. The necklace said it. The way he looked at her said it. The choice to bring her into his world said it louder than words ever could. Natalia Angelo belonged to Albertino Angelo, in every way that mattered, in every way that was forbidden, in every way that would eventually demand its price. And today, the entire criminal underworld would see the first public proof. The Four Seasons penthouse conference room overlooked Manhattan like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. Natalia entered beside Albertino, acutely aware of every eye tracking their arrival, the subtle shift in posture as the assembled families registered her presence, the sharp intake of breath when someone recognized the necklace at her throat. David Myers sat at the head of the opposing side of the table, flanked by his capos and consigliere. His expression flickered with surprise when he saw her, then shifted into something calculating and pleased. "Albertino, I wasn't expecting you to bring your lovely sister to a business negotiation." His smile was all predatory charm. "Though I can't say I'm disappointed." Albertino's hand settled at the small of Natalia's back, possessive, protective, unmistakable. "Natalia is family. She belongs at my side during discussions that concern the Angelo interests." The word choice was deliberate. Belongs. At my side. Natalia felt the weight of it as Albertino guided her to the chair beside his at the table, not across the room with the other non-participating family members, but in a position of significance. Vincent began the formal proceedings, laying out the counter-proposal with diplomatic precision. The shipping contract introduction. The strategic alliance with the Castellanos. A path forward that gave Myers expansion without capitulation. But David Myers barely listened. His attention kept drifting to Natalia, to the pendant at her throat, and the possessive way Albertino's hand occasionally brushed her shoulder. "It's a generous offer," Myers said finally, leaning back in his chair. "But it doesn't address the original proposal. The marriage alliance that would truly unite our families." The temperature in the room dropped. "There will be no marriage alliance." Albertino's voice was glacier cold. "That was never on the table for negotiation. Forgive me, but your sister seemed quite receptive to my attention at the summit." David's smile sharpened. "In fact, I'd say she actively encouraged it." A man might interpret that as interest. A man might be catastrophically wrong. Albertino's control was absolute, but Natalia felt the fury simmering beneath. "My sister's courtesy has been misinterpreted as availability. Let me correct that misunderstanding now, definitively and publicly." He stood, and every man in the room tracked the movement. When he spoke again, his words carried the weight of absolute authority. "Natalia Angelo wears our mother's necklace. A piece of family legacy that has been kept from circulation since her death 15 years ago. In our tradition, when the Angelo boss bestows such an item, it carries specific meaning." His hand settled on Natalia's shoulder, unmistakable claim. "It means the woman wearing it is under my complete protection. It means she is family legacy, not political currency. It means," his grip tightens slightly, "she is already claimed. By blood, by duty, by my irrevocable commitment to honor our parents' memory by keeping her safe from men who would use her as leverage." The silence was deafening. Every man in that room understood exactly what Albertino had just declared. Not marriage, but something deeper. Ownership that transcended politics. David Myers' expression darkened. "That's quite a declaration, Bernini. Though it still leaves the question of alliance unresolved. My family won't accept business contracts as substitute for the unity a marriage would provide." This was the moment. The opening Natalia had been waiting for. She touched Albertino's hand on her shoulder, a silent request for permission. He tensed, conflict flashing across his features, but then gave the slightest nod. Natalia stood, and every eye in the room shifted to her. "If I may?" Her voice was steady, channeling every lesson Albertino had taught her over the past week. "I've been studying the family dynamics while my brother has been protecting me from them. And I noticed something interesting about your proposal, Mr. Myers." David leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. "And what's that, Bella?" "You don't actually need a marriage alliance with the Angelos. What you need is legitimacy with the old families. The Castellanos, specifically." She gestured to the contract proposal on the table. "Your syndicate is powerful, but you're still considered new money. The old families don't respect rapid expansion without traditional foundations. And your point? My point is that my brother offering to broker an introduction with the Castellanos isn't a consolation prize. It's a strategic elevation. She met David's eyes directly, no fear. The Castellanos won't negotiate with families they don't respect. But if Albertino Angelo vouches for you, if he personally facilitates that connection, you're not just getting shipping contracts. You're getting legitimacy that no marriage alliance could provide. Vincent's expression shifted to something like approval. Thomas, the senior capo, was nodding slowly. David Myers studied her with new calculation. You're saying your brother's endorsement is worth more than your hand in marriage? I'm saying my brother's endorsement will open doors that marrying into the Angelo family never could. We're powerful, but we're also insular. The Castellanos are the real prize. They have connections across 5 states, international reach, unquestionable legitimacy. She leaned forward slightly. And they owe my brother a blood debt that he's willing to call in on your behalf. That's not a business transaction. That's a gift that positions your syndicate for the next decade of expansion. The room was utterly silent. Additionally, Natalia continued, her confidence growing. Accepting this counter-proposal allows you to save face. You can tell your people you extracted a valuable concession from the Angelos. You're not backing down. You're strategically pivoting to an opportunity with better long-term returns. Albertino's hand found hers under the table, squeezing once. Pride and possession in equal measure. David Myers was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed, genuine, surprised. Cristo Bernini. You've been hiding a strategic mind behind all that protection. I've been educating her, Albertino said quietly. Because Natalia is Angelo legacy. And Angelos don't play small. Clearly. David looked at his consigliere, who nodded subtly. All right. The counter-proposal is acceptable. With one addition, I want the Castellano introduction facilitated within 30 days. Done. Albertino stood, extending his hand. We have terms. As the men shook hands, sealing the agreement, Natalia felt the shift in the room. The Angelo Capos watching her with new respect. Vincent inclining his head in acknowledgement. Even the Myers syndicate members reassessing her as more than ornamental family. But it was Albertino's expression that mattered most, the fierce pride mixed with something darker, more possessive. His little sister had just proven herself as a strategic asset. And he would never let her go. The drive back to the estate was electric with unspoken tension. Natalia sat beside Albertino in the back of the town car, hyper-aware of every breath, every subtle movement, the way his hand rested possessively on her thigh. The necklace at her throat felt heavy with meaning, public claim, private promise, the weight of everything they'd been dancing around for weeks. You were extraordinary today. His voice was low, meant only for her despite Marco driving and the security detail following behind. The way you read the room, position the counter-proposal, Cristo, Natalia. You were born for this. I learned from the best. She covered his hand with hers, threading their fingers together. Did you see Vincent's face? I think I actually impressed him. You impressed everyone. His grip tightened. Including David Myers, which is both useful and dangerous. He sees me as a strategic mind now, not a potential acquisition. That's exactly what we wanted. What I wanted was to put a bullet in him the moment he called you Bella. The words came out rough, stripped of diplomatic pretense. Watching him look at you, knowing what he'd proposed, but you didn't. You played it perfectly. Made your claim without revealing. She stopped, suddenly uncertain of what to call the thing burning between them. Without revealing that I'm in love with my sister? Albertino's laugh was dark. That every man in that room could have died for the crime of breathing the same air as you? That the only thing keeping me civilized was knowing you needed me to be the controlled boss instead of the obsessed man? The confession landed like a detonation. Natalia's breath caught, heart hammering against her ribs. Albertino, don't. He pulled his hand away, jaw clenched. Don't say anything. I shouldn't have, Cristo, we're almost home. We can pretend I didn't just, I love you too. The words burst out, desperate and true. Not as a brother. Not as a protector. As the man who sees every part of me and still chooses to claim me as his. as the only man I've ever wanted and the only one I'll ever let touch me. The car pulled through the estate gates. Marco parked at the main entrance, and Albertino was out before the engine fully stopped, pulling Natalia with him. He dismissed the security detail with a curt gesture, then guided her through the foyer, up the stairs, past her bedroom, straight to his private suite. The door closed. Locked. And suddenly they were alone with the truth finally spoken between them. Last chance. Albertino's back was against the door, hands fisted at his sides like he was physically restraining himself. You walk out now, we can pretend this is still just protection. Still just family duty. But if you stay, I'm not leaving. Natalia crossed to him, placing her hands on his chest. I'm done pretending this is something it's not. Done hiding behind propriety and duty when we both know the truth. The truth is this is wrong. But even as he said it, his hands came up to frame her face. Every moral code, every family law, everything our parents would have wanted, our parents wanted us to love each other. To be family. To protect each other. She rose on her toes, bringing her lips inches from his. They never specified how that love should look. And Albertino? The way I love you, it's not sisterly. It never has been. His control shattered. He crushed his mouth to hers with bruising intensity, all the restrained hunger of weeks finally unleashed. His hands were everywhere, threading through her hair, gripping her waist, pulling her against him like he was trying to fuse them together. Natalia matched his desperation, fingers working the buttons of his shirt, kneading skin against skin. The necklace swung between them, cool metal brushing heated flesh, a reminder of the claim he'd made public and was about to make private. Tell me to stop. He broke the kiss long enough to trail his mouth down her throat, teeth grazing the pulse point hammering beneath her skin. Tell me this is wrong and I'll try to be the man I'm supposed to be. I don't want the man you're supposed to be. She pulled his shirt free, running her hands over the muscled planes of his chest. I want the man you are. The one who looks at me like I'm his. The one who's been fighting this as hard as I have. He lifted her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her to the massive four-poster bed. If we do this, there's no going back. You'll be mine, Natalia. Completely. No other man. No escape from what we become. I've been yours since the moment you pulled me aside at that summit and called me little sister, like it was both a warning and a prayer. She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. Claim me, Albertino. The way you've wanted to. The way I'm begging you to. He laid her on the bed with devastating gentleness, then stood back to drink in the sight of her, hair spread across his pillows, dress hiked up, the Angelo necklace at her throat marking her as his in every way that mattered. You're so beautiful it hurts to look at you. His voice was reverent. And you're mine. My responsibility. My obsession. My greatest sin. Then sin with me. He came to her then, capturing her mouth in a kiss that tasted like surrender and possession and forbidden promises. His hands found the zipper of her dress, sliding it down with aching slowness, revealing skin inch by inch like unwrapping something sacred. Natalia arched into his touch, gasping as his mouth followed the path his hands blazed. Every kiss was a claim. Every touch was devotion. Every whispered endearment in Italian was a prayer to a god they were defying. When he finally joined their bodies, they both stilled, the magnitude of the line they'd crossed settling over them like destiny. Mine, Albertino breathed against her lips, beginning to move with controlled intensity. Say it. Yours, Natalia gasped, meeting him thrust for thrust. Always yours. And in the sanctuary of his bedroom, with moonlight streaming through the windows and the weight of forbidden love finally consummated, they surrendered to the truth that had been inevitable from the moment he'd pulled her aside and declared her dangerous. They were each other's greatest risk, greatest reward, greatest sin. And neither would ever walk away. When love defies every rule, is it still worth the cost? Subscribe to see what comes next. Dawn broke over the Angelo estate in shades of gold and rose, casting warm light across the tangle of sheets where Natalia lay wrapped in Albertino's arms. She traced lazy patterns across his chest, mapping the scars that told stories of the violent world he navigated to keep their family safe. To keep her safe. We need to talk about what happens now. His voice rumbled beneath her ear, mourning rough and serious. What we've done, what we are to each other, it can't stay completely hidden. Not if you're going to be what you proved yesterday you could be. Natalia propped herself up on one elbow, studying his face. In the soft morning light, he looked less like the legendary Mafia boss and more like a man wrestling with impossible choices. What do you want me to be? Everything. He cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. My partner. My strategist. The woman at my side when I rebuild this family's legacy. But Natalia, that means visibility. Public presence. Questions we'll have to navigate carefully. The families will talk. They're already talking. After yesterday, the necklace, the way I positioned you, your intervention in the negotiation, every boss from here to Chicago is reassessing what you mean to the Angelo power structure. His expression grew intense. Vincent came to me last night. Before he stopped, the memory of what they'd done written clearly in his eyes. He said the men are asking questions. About your role. About my intentions. What did you tell him? The truth. Or as close to it as I can risk. Albertino sat up, pulling her with him so they faced each other in the rumpled bed. I told him you've been studying family strategy under my guidance. That I intend to give you an official position as my senior advisor for political alliances. Natalia's breath caught. An official position? Albertino, no Angelo woman has ever proven herself the way you did yesterday. He was firm, decided. You read that room better than half my capos. You found the angle that secured our terms while giving Myers exactly what he needed to save face. That's not luck, Tesoro. That's skill. And I'd be a fool not to use it. The old families will never accept it. A woman in a position of actual power, the old families will accept what the Angelo boss tells them to accept. His hands settled on her shoulders, grounding. But you're right that we need to be strategic about this. Which is why the official story is that you're my advisor. My sister, honoring our parents' legacy by helping build the family's future. Nothing more. And the unofficial truth? That you're mine in every way that matters. That I love you with an intensity that terrifies me. That if any man tries to use you against this family or take you from me, I'll burn down the entire underworld. He pulled her into his lap, arms banding around her waist. But that truth stays between these walls. In public, we're the devoted siblings honoring family duty. In private, I'm yours completely. She kissed him, soft and sure. Your lover. Your partner. Your greatest secret. Can you live with that? The duality? Playing the protected sister in public while being my equal in private. Natalia thought about it seriously. The weight of the deception, the constant vigilance it would require, the risk if they were ever discovered. But then she thought about the alternative, going back to being the sheltered girl locked in her room while Albertino carried the weight of leadership alone. Being separated from the only man she'd ever loved, the only life she'd ever wanted. I can live with it, she said finally. As long as we're building something real. As long as I'm not just playing pretend at partnership while you make all the actual decisions. You proved yesterday you're too valuable for pretend. He stood, pulling her with him, gloriously naked and unashamed in the morning light. Come. I want to show you something. He led her to the walk-in closet, to a safe hidden behind custom shelving. His fingers worked the combination, and the heavy door swung open to reveal stacks of documents, cash, and a single wooden box. Albertino lifted the box reverently, bringing it to the bed. This belonged to our father. He gave it to me the week before he died, told me it contained everything I'd need to lead this family successfully. He opened the lid. Inside were personal papers, photographs, and a leather journal filled with their father's handwriting. I've never shown this to anyone. Not Vincent, not the Capos. It felt too personal, too sacred. He pulled out the journal, flipping to a marked page. But I want you to see this. What Papa wrote the day he knew he was dying. Natalia took the journal with trembling hands. Her father's familiar script filled the page, dated 2 weeks before the heart attack that had taken him. My greatest fear is leaving my children alone in this dangerous world. Albertino has the strength to lead, the strategic mind to navigate our enemies. But he carries too much alone. He needs someone he can trust absolutely, someone who sees both the boss and the man beneath. Natalia has her mother's political instincts, the ability to read people and situations with uncanny accuracy. If she were a son, I'd train her to stand beside Albertino as consigliere. But the old traditions won't allow it. My hope, my dying wish, is that they find a way to be what each other needs. That Albertino protects her, yes, but also trusts her. That Natalia supports him, strengthens him. That together, they become something greater than either could be alone. Family isn't just blood. It's choosing each other every day, despite the cost. I pray they understand that. Natalia's eyes burned with tears. He wanted this. Not exactly this, but he wanted us to be partners. To make each other stronger. Albertino took the journal back, setting it aside to pull her close. We can't give him the conventional family legacy he might have imagined, but we can give him something better. A family built on truth and trust and love that defies categorization. The Angelo family's greatest strength, Natalia whispered, echoing the words from their story's beginning. Exactly. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. So here's what we do. Today, I announce your new position to the senior capos. You become my official advisor, present at all strategic meetings. We give you an office, resources, authority that's real and respected. And in private? In private, you're my everything. We build a life in the spaces between duty and desire. We honor our parents by making this family stronger than it's ever been. His hands framed her face. And we love each other with the intensity we've both been fighting, because denying it almost destroyed us both. Natalia smiled, something bright and fierce and free blooming in her chest. When do we start? Now. Albertino pulled her toward the shower, purpose and passion in equal measure. We have a family meeting in 2 hours. Time to show them what the new Angelo leadership looks like. And as water cascaded over them, and they planned their strategy for navigating the dangerous world they'd been born into, Natalia realized this was what she'd been fighting for all along. Not escape from Albertino's protection, but true partnership within it. Not freedom from family duty, but the chance to fulfill it on her own terms. Together, they would rewrite what it meant to be Angelo. Would honor their parents' memory by becoming exactly what the family needed, two people bound by blood and choice and forbidden love, building a legacy that would outlast them both. The Mafia boss and his indispensable partner. The brother and sister who'd crossed every line to find truth. The lovers who'd chosen each other despite the cost. And the Angelo family's greatest strength, forged in fire and sealed in devotion that would never break. Thanks for listening to this story. Please subscribe and click the video on the left side of your screen. It's even more interesting than the one you just listened to.